cannot tell the police to avoid looking into evidence which might provide evidence of innocence of a person. And yet, of course, that's precisely what this instruction by the Crown Prosecution Service did. So I had an email on the 22nd of March 2018 saying that my name had been given. They'd been searching for somebody. My name had come up for the medico-legal side of things, and that they were investigating a spike in the number of babies collapsing and dying in a neonatal unit at a hospital, and that they'd collected substantial material, and what they wanted was somebody to help them understand and assess the chances of sheer coincidence. So, I responded and arranged to have a conversation, as well as asking what information was available. And, very early on, I said, the correct approach is very well established, been established since 1980, of how you investigate these things. And I explained what the correct approach was and what the correct question to ask was, which is, if you have a cluster of events, what are the possible explanations and which is the most likely? Yes, there was a spike in numbers, and yes, you needed to investigate. But of course, that's what you need to do. You need to investigate. You don't assume we've had a spike, therefore there must be a murderer. So to be asked, can you come up with a figure like 1 in a million that there's one particular person present, is completely the wrong question. And of course, it's an echo of the Sally Clark mistake that was made by a retired paediatrician in the late 90s. I was quite surprised that the police arrested Letby at a stage when, as far as I knew, they couldn't possibly have had valid evidence against her. In 2021, thereabouts, I think I started getting messages from colleagues, because I was the chair of the Royal Statistical Society Stats and the Law section, and various colleagues emailed me and said, look, this case has got into the newspapers, and this looks like a rerun of previous miscarriages of justice. So, yes, I basically pointed out what needed to be done, but then carried on being busy with a lot of other things. My default is I like working collaboratively. I want to work with paediatricians and so on, so that we can, complement one another. I've published 25 papers in paediatric epidemiology, which I gather is rather more than Dewey Evans has published. But I'm not a medical doctor, so I have fairly decent knowledge of quite a lot of the language, but I would always prefer to work collaboratively with paediatricians, pathologists, so on, whoever is relevant for that particular issue. In 2021, so probably a little bit before I was being asked that the Stats and the Law Committee should do something, I had a meeting arranged, as The Guardian discovered, to discuss the evidence. And then that meeting was cancelled because the Crown Prosecution Service had been told that this meeting was scheduled to discuss the validity of the statistical evidence in the case. And the prosecutor, I got this email saying the prosecutor does not agree with our line of inquiry and has instructed us not to pursue this avenue any further at present. Now, I didn't know then, and I might not have had time even if I did, that was both a breach of the code for Crown prosecution, instructing the police not to get evidence. It is also, as far as I understand, a criminal act by the Crown Prosecution Service, because the Police Investigation and something Bill of 1996 specifically says you cannot tell the police to avoid looking into evidence which might provide evidence of innocence of a person. And yet, of course, that's precisely what this instruction by the Crown Prosecution Service did. I have never been able to get anything sensible out of the CPS. I guess there should be a police, well, a detective superintendent or the police commissioner for the relevant area should take an interest in the fact that, as far as we can tell, a crime has been committed. And therefore it's their responsibility, not mine, to follow it up. So, this is a state responsibility. My MP is not prepared to take it on. The Minister for Justice and the Minister for Health were not prepared to respond to my expressions of concern. The Minister for Justice should, I think, have looked into this and said, please let me know exactly what happened and who made this instruction. Some of the police officers involved in the case recognised the statistical issues and wanted proper input. But then there were also clearly people who didn't want the appropriate input. And frankly, if they didn't know they were doing the wrong thing, they ought to have done. There's extensive stuff in medical education, regulation, Department of Health advice about how to do these things properly. And the sort of Liverpool region has got fairly extensive networks of medical statisticians. They also ought to know that the Health Protection Agency or Health Security England or Health Security Agency, or whatever it feels like being called at the time, that is one of their areas of expertise. It's not an area of expertise of the police.